Hi, welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's episode, we're back to working on the 32 Roadster. The plan this week is to mate this 292 Y block to that AOD transmission and put it in the 32 Roadster chassis. Going to be kind of like what we did with the 40 Plymouth. There is a transmission adapter that has to go on the transmission before it goes on here. And this engine came out of a 1964 F100. It is really dirty, so I'm going to do a little scrub down on this, try and get some of the dirt off. I think it still even has the engine oil into it, so we're going to drain that out. I might take the valve covers off, take a look and see what it's like inside, but follow along and see how we make out. With the instructions that came with this adapter plate to put the AOD on the Y block, one of the first things they tell you to do is you have to modify the bell housing on the AOD transmission. So I've started this already, but if you can see where my finger is right there, this material is going to be ground away so that the starter mechanism here, this section will go forward and engage the flex plate. So right now, this actually comes off of the starter, normally so, per the instructions. So right now, I can put that in there. And if I do this right, I'm almost there. So I got a little bit more work to do. I'm going to have to take this on and off a few more times and then grind away. Not sure if you can see, yep, you can see the shiny spot there of what I'm going to grind away here. So I'm going to carry on with that, get that all sorted out. I want to do that to the transmission before I get it rebuilt in case I screw something up. Worst case scenario, if you screw grinding it up, you're out a couple $100 and you get another transmission case. Whereas if, you know, I rebuilt the whole transmission, I would rather do it, the rework at this stage, make sure everything's okay. So just follow along. We're going to get this all hooked up here shortly. I think I had the time lapse really cranked up on that one. That took just a little over half an hour, and we have success. If I press this button in, the gear freely moves, which is what it's supposed to do. So we've got that part done. So now I'm ready to take this aluminum plate, put it on the back of the engine, and we'll mount the transmission onto the engine, and then we'll move it over here into the car and begin basically these steps to make the engine mounts and the transmission mounts. engine mounts on the Y block and the 32 Ford here, we are going to make up engine mounts similar to what I made up like this that we did on the 40 Plymouth. The difference being the mounting location on the Y block is a little bit different. I've already made this plate up right here, which goes right there. It's held on by 2 bolts. And then over here on the bench, I've started making up the bits and pieces. So there's this piece on its side. Here is this section that sits on the biscuit. And then here are the gussets that we're going to weld in place. So I'm just going to get the welder going here. We're going to weld these up and get them ready to go on the car. There is the engine mount. I dressed it up a little bit. I welded these mounts on the inside and the outside of the gussets. Made sure I got full penetration on the welds because I don't want to mess around with engine mounts. And right now I put the biscuit in place because I'm going to have to figure out exactly where the mount goes between the biscuit and the frame. What I'm going to do something similar as what we did on the 40 Plymouth. I kind of like this setup. I have it on my other cars. So what I will use is a piece of 2x3 3/16 wall tubing, rectangular tubing, and I'll cut this wedge out of it. Now this is a trial piece that I put a hole into it, but essentially I'm going to cut a piece like this, and then the hole will go over here, and then this will fit underneath that puck right there to support it. So follow along, we're making progress here, getting the Y block in the 32 Ford. Now working on a transmission mount. I took some dimensions off the bottom of the car And I calculated that I needed about a 3 3/8 inch dip from the bottom of the frame. The other thing I needed to do is actually make this bracket on a 6.9 degree angle, because the transmission actually slopes down away from the frame. The transmission pan does not, but the mount itself does. So kind of have to mirror that in the transmission mount that we're going to build here. So one of the things that I did, I played around with a piece of paper, and I determined that I don't know what this actual angle is here. I think it's actually close to 7 degrees, but I took my mini grinder and basically put a groove in the 1/4 inch plate here. And then what happens is, after I bend it, it gives me the 7 degree angle that I'm looking for. So we get our 7 degree angle on the bottom of the transmission mount. And then across the top, if we can set this up here. Sorry, I don't have the camera lady right now. She's not available. And across the top here, this angle here is actually at a 90 degrees. It comes out flush with the bottom of the frame. So this mount is basically, I've done a trial fit. I took this along with the insulator here, and I put it underneath the car, and I made sure that, I've got the right distance, got the right width. I laid out on my table here, it's really faint right now, black marker for the overall width of the mounts and the amount of drop. So basically fit this bracket within that layout there. So what I'll do now is I'm going to weld these corners up, and then I'm going to drill 2 holes here on each side. So ultimately this bracket is going to be a removable transmission bracket, and I don't think I need to gusset this, because the span is actually shorter than what it was on the Plymouth. The Plymouth, it was actually much wider. I was more comfortable putting a gusset in, but I've done these on 32 Fords before. My 32 pickup, my Model A is sitting on a 32 frame, and this is exactly how I made my transmission mounts. They're very strong, very robust. It's 1/4 inch plate. I think it's either 2.5 or 3 inches wide. So lots of strength there. So going to carry on with this. Like I said, I'll weld it up. I'll drill these 2 holes, and then I'll put it underneath the car, and I'll show you here in a couple minutes. So here we have it, the 292 Y block and a Ford AOD transmission in a 32 Ford Roadster frame. In this episode, we covered building the engine mounts and installing them, making the transmission mount in the back and installing it. So everything is all in place right now. Part of the process was basically to try and find how we can fit the Y block within the radiator and the firewall. I didn't want to bring the firewall back on this one. What my intention was is to take this original cut up firewall and extend the sheet metal straight down so it comes down behind the distributor here. And at this stage, I think I've got about 3/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch clearance between the distributor and where that firewall would be. And then on the front of the engine here, we've got about 1.5 inches clearance between the pulley here and where the radiator is going to be. So that's enough, because I plan basically to run an electric fan. I still think there's enough room to run a mechanical fan, but I kind of like the electric fans. It's a little cleaner. The other thing I put in was the Unisteer steering box down here. I didn't mention that at the beginning of the episode because I wasn't sure if I had to put it in or not, but I've got it in because I wanted to make sure that it cleared the bottom of the oil pan. The one nice thing about having the 292 truck engine is that it's got a rear sump, and then I've got this on the front here. It's quite shallow, so I've got a lot of clearance here. I've seen other guys put Y blocks in, and they have the passenger car engine, the sump is in the front, and they have to raise the engine up higher. So I was able to basically lower this about 1 inch lower than what a friend did on his, because he had the front sump. And then I was also able to move my engine forward just a little bit more to have the clearance on the firewall. But the whole process of going in, it's quite iterative. You've got to put it in and move it and up and down until you finally get that right place for it. So that's it. A 292 Y block with a Ford AOD transmission and a 32 Ford Roadster. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode. It's a little different than other ones because the camera lady wasn't available for a lot of the footage, but she's here now and we'll wind it up with her and finish this video off. So please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Please send me any comments or questions you may have, and I'll see you next week. Everybody take care.